Hello and welcome back to the X-Files Revisited. We are moving on to episode 5 of season 5, the Post Modern Prometheus. Brian, why don't you tell us a little bit about the legacy of this episode?
So this is a bit of a fan favorite. I think I said that last week. There are certain elements in this that I think are what really propels it into a fan favorite. And I can kind of see why it's become a fan favorite, and yet there's something about it that, and we'll get into it when we get into it, where I don't know if it quite clicks as well with me. Now, right. I'm not saying it's a bad episode, not by a long stretch, definitely not by a long stretch, and you'll see that when we get to my score. But yeah, I don't know. I maybe talking it all through will help me out on it. But yeah, I just know that there's a lot of clips that are often played from this one. There's a lot of stills that are often taken from this one in X-Files forums and things like that. It is one that often comes up. So, yeah. Do you care to guess where it sits in the 217 episodes ranking on IMDb?
27.
Okay. I think my talk of it being a fan favorite has probably affected that. But yeah, it's actually it's actually 41. So right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I would have said 41 if you hadn't said fan favorite.
Yeah, I figured you would have. Yeah, thought I'd throw you off.
I still can't believe I actually got one right at some point. Like,
yeah. Okay. So, all right. We kick off the episode with a couple of teenage boys. Look like the kind that would spend most of their lives in their mum's basements on the
or at a Comic Con
360s or at a Comic Con, and they're going to, hey, guess what? A Comic Con. the 90s stereotype of what it was to be a comic book geek. It was these kind of
I love the names, Brian. Izzy and Booger.
It was these kind of representations that kind of made me reluctant to admit that I was a comic book fan back in my high school days, whereas today it's pretty cool to do so.
It's a badge of honor.
Yeah,
these days.
Yeah. Okay, so they're going off to a convention. Their mum, she's the mum to one of them, not the other, but she's really overly protective. You can tell she's like proper mothers him, and she's like, she wants to make sure he stays safe and stuff. But then she goes back inside the house and watches what any mother of the 90s would be watching, Jerry Springer. So oh man, anybody watching this for the first time today is not going to have a clue what any of this really, the cultural impact and implications and whatnot as to what is actually happening right now is just going to be like totally going over people's heads.
I'll tell you what's weird for me personally, and it's watching this episode, how it starts from like a comic book and then we go into the black and white photography, which I think is exquisite. But I almost forgot we're watching an X-Files episode. So it was like black and white, the way the kids were dressed, the kind of language is all stylized. And it wasn't until Jerry Springer appeared in the TV, I was like, oh, right, that's the time scale that we're in. And then
Graham Smith is shouting at the dogs, is it?
My daughter. I completely lost kind of thought. Yeah, got it. And I'm just thinking, like, people watching this now who've never seen it, are they going to assume that Jerry Springer might have been back in like the 50s or something? Like, just such a weird thought.
Yeah. So for anyone who Jerry Springer is lost upon, talk show host in the 90s. I say talk show host. He used to have the the inbreds of society up and just essentially let them ridicule themselves by opening their own mouths. Crazy people, basically.
It was a modern day freak show.
Yeah, it was. It was a modern day
fitting with this whole episode.
So so the woman's watching Jerry Springer, and we suddenly see curtains kind of on the outside of the house coming down from the top, which I'm like, okay.
See, I kind of knew what that was.
Did you?
Yeah, because I've seen many other movies where they've got the fumigation tents.
Right, because when I see this thing, I'm like, it's literally in the shape of the house.
Yeah, that's weird.
Like, so, and again, because it's harkening back to the whole like 1930s, 40s kind of thing.
It's like a circus tent.
Yeah, I think maybe you can accept it and go along with it. But I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, one, what is that? And two, like once I have worked out what it is, I'm like, who would go to such lengths to make one that actually fits perfectly around the house, as if it was made for that house's very shape?
Yeah.
Like who's going to go to that much effort to do whatever it is they're going to do? Impregnate this.
Well, in fairness, they've used it in that house more than once.
That's true. That is true. But yeah, it's just weird. Every time I watch it, I'm like, I can't. It takes me out, I think, of the story because I'm too busy trying to work out the logistics of putting that thing together.
But again, it's this whole episode is so exaggerated, and almost from the reactions, the people, the town. It's just another exaggeration,
Yeah.
These kind of tents don't fit that neat over every nook and cranny of the house.
So anyway, while the house is tea-cozied, Elephant Man enters to a Cher song, and the thing just gets really bizarre. So it's literally just like, how can we raise the bar of how freaky this gets? Tea cozy over the house, as if that isn't weird enough. Elephant Man walks in the room, as if that isn't weird enough. Elephant Man is going to start listening to Cher as he gets about his business. So yeah, very strange. Opening title sequence, and then we have Mulder and Scully on a road trip to this place, and Scully reads Mulder a letter from the woman, who it seems is now pregnant.
Yep.
Okay. So
again,
nice little convo with Mulder and Scully. Again, they could have just relayed the information, but they have a few nice little bits of banter between Mulder and Scully that just just helps it.
Again, it brings in the whole Jerry Springer aspect, which seems to be a big focus on this episode.
Yes.
That kind of pointing out people's weirdness and like an almost like laughing at them, entertainment kind of way, and how Mulder seems to be in the same vein as Springer, with his constantly believing things and not bringing out for people's more curio rather than entertainment.
I think a lot of it as well feeds into the idea of fame and the pursuit of it and what people are willing to do to get it. Like we look at, I'll get to it a bit further on, but obviously the mad scientist at the center of this story is very much in the vein of that particular theme, but Mulder and Scully question the woman. Mulder was apparently mentioned on Jerry Springer. There's an interesting moment when the woman from the house at the beginning, she is she's talking about all these freakish things, aliens and this, that, and the other,
Yeah.
and Mulder, as a kind of carry on from the opening of the season's opening episodes, he literally says, "I'm not sure if I even believe in that stuff anymore." So it's a reminder to us that actually Mulder has had his faith shaken to the point that alien stuff, monsters and that might be all right, but aliens, he's not sure anymore. There's doubt there. So Scully comes out of Izzy's bedroom with a comic book called The Great Mutato, and in which the man on the front, the said Great Mutato, looks exactly like the man that we saw at the beginning and that this woman has described as being the one who came in. So yeah, just got even weirder.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that scene? Or
no, not particularly. It's always good to see Scully just looking for the reason why, oh, look, it's a tape of the Invisible Man. Oh, look, it's a comic book, The Great Mutato. It's like, okay, I've got tenuous evidence.
Yeah,
it's not an X-File.
Yeah, that in and of itself is almost like a carryover from last week's episode, isn't it? We see a pattern in Scully's kind of detective thing. What's the first thing I can latch onto? But so basically, this is a comic book that Izzy has created.
Yeah,
and it turns out that Izzy got the idea from a real person, apparently, that lives in the town. And the only way to coax this person out is with a peanut butter sandwich, which Mulder is all up for kind of buying into, because the woman had her peanut butter all eaten, supposedly. But obviously, if you're going to create a hoax in which this guy only comes out with peanut butter, then obviously you would say that the peanut butter was all eaten. So it really proves nothing. That is a tenuous thread as well. So I think in reality, if this was reality, I would be on Scully's side here.
but even the exaggerated sizes of the peanut butter jars, huge, ridiculously huge.
Yeah. Maybe that's just America. I don't know.
It could be, but that just seems like a lot.
Yeah. So Scully tells Mulder that it's all a load of baloney concocted by small town people trying to get onto the Jerry Springer show, which again feeds into that idea that everyone wants to be famous, and kind of Jerry Springer was like the lowest common denominator for becoming famous. So it was kind of like the quick buck way to become famous, though you become famous for all the wrong things when you end up with Jerry Springer. So why anybody would want to do that, I don't know. But the Great Mutato takes a bite of the sandwich and a chase ensues. They lose him, but a man stops them and tells them they're trespassing. And then when they introduce themselves, he says, "I'll show them the real monster." Says so that they say they're looking for a monster. It's like, "You want to see a monster? I'll show you the real monster." Which turns out to be his son. But yeah, go on.
Yeah. I love how everyone is such an archetype, just stereotypical characters. He's the old curmudgeon, get off my lawn. And then, like you say, we jump to a scientist literally in a room filled with jars and experiments, like the most over-exaggerated mad scientist laboratory.
Frankenstein. It's just it's very clearly a take on Frankenstein. Not just any Frankenstein, but just like a particular Frankenstein, the 1931 James Whale kind of thing. So so a scientist with ideas well above his station. This is a guy who, as with the smaller folk of the town, this is someone with a much higher intellect. But really, at the end of the day, all his character boils down to is somebody who's seeking fame. He doesn't have any high ideals, any moral aspirations to help humanity. He literally just he's in it for the Nobel Prize. He wants to be recognized as one of the great scientists. So he's literally no different to the so-called little people that he resents so much. But yeah. So Mulder asks, what is the I couldn't pronounce it. Chromatic Hox gene or something like that. I butchered that. I know I have. Just let's move along. And basically it's to do with something sciencey, which basically means that this guy can grow a fly.
He can mutate things.
Yeah, he can mutate things. He can grow legs onto a fly and instantly become suspect number one. In fact, the only suspect at this point.
But I love a moment here. Now, it's a typical moment, and it's a quote you've heard before. We just like, well, why would you do that?
Yeah. Because I can.
Which comes back to bite him in the ass later on, which I love that kind of sentiment.
But that's actually the most beautiful moment of the episode when that comes back, because this one is said in hubris, whereas later it's said in love. And it's just it was a really brilliantly written moment. I think Carter wrote and directed this one, actually, if I'm not mistaken. So but yeah, so basically this guy is Frankenstein, too busy asking if it could be done that he doesn't stop to ask whether it should. Scully tells Mulder there's no way this could be done on humans, but Mulder says, then why bother to do them at all? And she says to understand why things become what they are. Which is kind of like she's almost giving reason for this guy to be a prick.
Yeah.
It's like, well, somebody's got to do it. Why wouldn't we? So yeah, that's the scientist in Scully coming out there. But I wrote down in very large letters here with an exclamation mark at this point, because it started to get ridiculous, was the lightning.
Yes, it's constant.
It's like everything that's being said, that it's kind of punctuated with these streaks of lightning. So,
but it's juxtaposed with this like really kind of weird music, like circus music, fairy tale kind of music that's almost jaunty but leaning towards creepy.
Yeah,
as well. Yeah, which I kind of like that.
So we go to Frankenstein getting home. His wife is there. It turns out she really wants a baby. And he's like, yeah, no. And he's kind of keeps on trying to downplay it. And then there's a really great line when he says, like she's getting a bit het up about it. And he grabs her and he's like, what do you want? A baby or a Nobel Prize? Which
there's no doubt what the answer would be. Absolutely none.
It's like, exactly what this guy is all about in that moment. It's just like it just says it all. So he leaves.
Again, like you said, it's the thunder and lightning. It's the like her stereotypically packing his suitcase. She's got the penny on. She's like the dutiful housewife. She's almost put upon. In the bit where like he walks out the house and she like dramatically throws herself on the bed. I thought it was so funny.
So so she throws herself on the bed, as you said, and because she doesn't see the tea cozy coming down over the top of her house. But yeah, so victim number 2. Victim. So we go to a diner that's got some real Twin Peaks vibes going on.
Yep.
Scully gives Mulder the morning paper that has their conversation in it that they had while they were out with Izzy, which, kind of feeds into what Scully was saying about these people wanting to be famous and are willing to do anything to make it happen.
I personally love this sequence, and it's a mirrored sequence that comes later on as he walks through, and he's just like looking, going that these people, they're odd. And then the chef comes out, one of my favorite lines. He's like, "My name's JJ with 2 J's." Okay, bud.
Yeah, it's just like they're looking at Mulder like a meal ticket, which is it's quite amusing that it's in a diner, because Mulder is their meal ticket to fame. That's the way they're seeing it anyway. But so they make a quick exit anyway. They go to speak to Izzy, and they find the recording. Sorry, but when they're looking through the recording, it also has Cher and the Great Mutato singing on it. So it's
And you get a flashback sequence here too, which I felt was almost like a John T. Risky Business kind of sequence, where he slides along the floor.
That was definitely Risky Business, definitely.
He's belting out the Cher hit as well, and just
No, I think
he's just building that romantic mood.
I think when you see that, you're meant to think Risky Business. I don't know how you couldn't. It's too iconic. But yeah, so Mulder wants to have the tape examined. Scully thinks it's all a hoax, but Mulder thinks Frankenstein has something to do with it. Scully says he's reducing him down to the literary stereotype of the mad scientist. And it's at that point that Mulder talks about the postmodern Prometheus, which is obviously the title of the episode. And just correct me if I'm wrong, Prometheus is the one who stole from the gods. Was he the one who stole fire from the gods to?
Yeah, he was the god of fire. I know that.
I think I'm sure he's the one who stole.
Stole fire, and
because there's Icarus who got too close to the sun.
He got too close to
and he got burnt and fell down. I think Prometheus is the one who stole fire from the gods, and it
gave it to humanity.
It caused a mess basically. And that's essentially what the scientist is. He's doing things he shouldn't be doing. He's meddling with things that he shouldn't be meddling with. And as we know, in every single science fiction film we've ever seen in which a scientist meddles with things they shouldn't meddle with, it all goes tits up.
There's a wonderful sequence and quote, and I don't know if it comes now or later on with Scully, and somebody says, what is it? Trying to create something in my own image. Well, we have done that. It's called procreation.
Yes. Yeah, that was really great quote. I think I wrote that down actually.
Is it later on?
I think it is. Yeah. Anyway, if we come across it, we'll come across it. But yeah, it was a great quote. And it's just like, yeah. All right. So inside the house, they find the doctor's wife. Have I jumped ahead here? I have, yeah. So they're driving again. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're driving again. Scully reads Izzy's mum's medical report, which confirms she did have an operation that would make her barren before apparently getting knocked up. So, yeah, crazy. Mulder backs up the car when he sees a tea-cozied house.
Yeah.
Because he's suddenly starts getting his brain whirring. So inside the house, they find the doctor's wife in bed, gas everywhere. It knocks them out. And then when they wake up, Frankenstein's dad... When it knocks them out, Frankenstein's dad comes in with a gas mask on and says, "I told you, there are no monsters." So, yeah. So at this point, were you kind of thinking, oh, it's the dad of the scientist, not the scientist?
I actually thought, oh, hang on, there's no mutato. It's the drugs, and it's this man's mask where they're seeing two mouths from the air.
Right. Okay.
So I went more that route.
Right. All right. So Mulder and Scully come to find Frankenstein returned home. To find Frankenstein returned home along with the police. Mulder accuses him of knowing something. He looks drunk. Scully says it's all a hoax. Mulder finds the smoking gun. Jar of empty peanut butter.
Yeah. I find this sequence hilarious because it's all like physical comedy.
Yeah.
They're trying to have an interrogation while they can barely stand. But every time he stumbles, he finds something that helps his investigation, which I thought was great.
We cut from there to Mask, the film starring Cher and Eric Stoltz. Turns out Elephant Man, or the Great Mutato, is watching it and really identifies with it for obvious reasons.
Wants to be a biker.
Yeah, exactly. Frankenstein's dad brings him a sandwich and basically, treats him nicely and talks to him like a human being, and then leaves him be. So, thoughts on that?
I like that sequence because, like I said, I was thinking maybe there isn't a mutato in the last sequence, and obviously we see it. As soon as we see Mask, I was like, okay, right, I kind of know where this is going. I like that little bit of tenderness that we have here, because in all honesty, it's the first real sense of that we've had within the episode of just general acceptance of who somebody is, not trying to be something else or do something else, just emoting properly, so to speak.
I've not seen Mask since I was a young teenager, but I do remember it having quite a powerful effect on me as a young man. I don't know if it holds up today. As I say, I've not seen it in a long time, but I do remember getting the feels when I first saw it. Frankenstein's dad looks at photos of the Great Mutato when Frankenstein shows up asking why, to which his answer is, because I can. And then his son strangles him. But it's a really beautiful dichotomy to what we've already seen. There are certain things we can do because we can. We can be instruments of destruction for our own ego, or we can choose to love. And it's just like, and that's the crux of the whole episode. It's like we can do a lot of things, but they will have one of two outcomes. Which one are you going to choose? Good or evil, darkness or light? And it's a very simple notion that's really well conveyed just in the idea of this man looking after the son of his son, because his son was too much of a douchebag to do it himself. Great stuff. So so he gets strangled, and then Mulder is made to feel unwelcome at the diner as he sits down to read the paper. The headline: FBI says monster is a hoax. Like you said before, mirrors that scene, only this time, guy spitting on the burger, people
The egg. That's neat.
People stopping him from being able to sit down and throwing stuff at the back of his neck.
Yeah, pouring hot coffee over him.
Yeah,
hey lady, that's not a place you want to burn.
So he then notices that there is some commotion outside. He goes out to check it out, and a post office employee intercepted a package.
Yeah. Just opened it.
How does one intercept a package? It's like
looking for things to steal.
Mm-hmm. It turns out to be a mask. This creates hysteria when people realize it's Izzy, and his mum comes over and starts arguing the toss. So they think, Izzy's the one who started the story, and he's had a mask sent to him. So clearly it's all a hoax that he's been doing. So they town goes wild.
Yeah, and for no reason at all, when it cuts back to it, Izzy's behind the glass door, just faces with it.
It's such a random shot, isn't it? It's like, wow. It's just this guy. This guy's like a man-child, total man-child. It's almost like they show you that to make you think, no, this guy couldn't pull off a hoax of this magnitude, even if he tried. So Scully tells Mulder he might have been right, just as he begins to doubt his theories. The stuff on the frying pan is an agricultural product used to anesthetize animals. She says the farmers who use it have to be registered with the FDA. So obviously, looking into which farmers in the area would be registered to use that, it brings them straight to Frankenstein's dad. But yeah, the great mutato finds Frankenstein's dad dead in the kitchen and says a tearful and mournful goodbye, and then kind of drags him out to the barn and buries him. Yeah. You kind of feel for this guy because you know instantly that this old man was the only good thing in his life besides his mask tape. Okay. So Mulder and Scully arrive at the barn. They find the gas bars and a grave. Then the reporter, who we have seen in the diner several times, and she's been floating around, and she's got like this chicken kind of thing going on with her head, which is very bizarre, very Twin Peaks. She tells them that the old man was murdered because she's been up in the rafters all the time, kind of watching. It's just weird. Yeah, just weird. Just doing a story. So inside the house, they find pictures in the album. Reporter says she saw the creature burying the old man. Then we get that classic moment that all these great 1930s horror movies have of the townspeople showing up with their pitchforks and torches, literal torches, like not battery operated torches. This is the 90s.
Flaming rags on sticks.
Yes, they literally rock up with flaming rags on sticks, which was just hilarious.
Yes. Oh, I loved it. And it's led by Frankenstein himself.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah.
The self-proclaimed smartest man in town, who's above all these people, is leading them for blood. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, harkening back to the old Frankenstein movie, that those torches are quite necessary for what is about to happen. But they are led by Frankenstein, who says they are there for the murderer. Scully tells Mulder the only way Frankenstein could have known is if he'd been there himself. Then they catch sight of the monster in the cellar. So the townsfolk all go off to the barn, searching for the monster. They see him kind of popping his head out. So they go down there to have a word with him.
Well, quickly, before we get there, there's two things I want to touch on. One is the absolutely hilarious line reading of the man sticking his head out going, "The barn's on fire." These idiots don't realise that fire, spreads, especially a wooden barn, and it's like that incredulous take of it, which was funny. And the share shrine that we discover when they're looking around the basement, Mulder and Scully are just like, even then I was like, why? There's a great response as to why Cher's prominent all the way through this, but I'm just like, why?
So if my memory serves me correctly, Cher was actually a big fan of the X-Files, and there were a lot of big stars back then who wanted to get a guest spot on the show because they were fans. And I believe I could be confusing this with someone else, but I think it was Cher who was supposed to actually be in this episode.
Wow, that would have been great.
But it fell through for whatever reason, and they ended up having to get a stand-in. But if there's anyone out there who can correct me on that, if I'm wrong, then please do so, because I wouldn't say that with 100% certainty, but for some reason that's floating about in my head. If they can get Jodie Foster, I'm sure they can get Cher. So yeah. So they go down to find him. The townsfolk foolishly set fire to the barn, much akin to James Whale's Frankenstein, in which the old mill, the mill at the end gets set on fire. Only there it's intentional. Here it's just stupidity. So then the reporter notices Mulder and Scully trying to get Mutato out of the storm cellar, so she gives them away. And that's when everyone comes down. They're all like, "Give us him," and this, that, and the other. And then Mulder kind of takes charge of the situation, and Mutato gets to tell his story. Turns out he was created and rejected by Frankenstein, only to be raised by Frankenstein's father, who used his son's science to try and create a mate for him. So, yeah. So it turns out he's done this quite a lot over the years. And as he's telling this story about what his grandfather did for him on multiple occasions, to not any great success, although it did wield children for many people, we suddenly see different townsfolk members, and then we cut from them to different animals in the barn, which they bear a striking resemblance to, whether it's a chicken, a goat, or whatever, which suggests that maybe all of these people,
human DNA,
maybe all of these people were the result of this guy's experiment.
But you also see in the diner sequence, like all the people look rather like each other. Yeah.
Oh man, it's a bizarre one. Okay, all right. So Frankenstein is arrested, but unfortunately, so is the Great Mutato. And we go to a scene in which Mulder is unhappy with the ending and wishes to speak with the writer. And then in walks Izzy, and we get a scene which my reading of it is it's fantasy. It's the ending Mulder would have liked to have had happen, and he gets Izzy to put that ending into his comic book. And that's why we finish on Izzy's comic book work at the end. But so
you can kind of tell that when Mulder high fives him in front of Cher.
And he does his little shoulder dance.
He dances with Scully. It's nice. It's a smile-inducing finale. I thought it was a great kind of final sequence almost.
But it's kind of bittersweet because you come out of it going, yeah, but it's not real.
Yeah,
that's not the ending. Actually, the scientist got arrested, which that's good, but so did the but
there's one more. Well, there's kind of intercut with that? Is it intercut with that? We get the Jerry Springer sequence.
Yeah. So it's like, so the women that have been impregnated finally have their babies, and they're like little monster babies that look a bit weird and freakish.
Mutational.
Yeah, mutated babies. So yeah, and we obviously we get Cher kind of singing, which definitely would have been better had it been the real Cher and not.
Yeah.
But right, care to wrap up?
I like this one almost immediately. See, that black and white photography just fits so well with X-Files. I'd be interested to see other episodes like this, the Monsters of the Week, to see if they kind of fit that aesthetic. Like sequences when they're driving down the road just looks really cool in that kind of monochrome. I find this one to be hilarious, Brian. The over-exaggeration and the over-characterization of just people stereotypes is just so hilarious to me. Like even silly moments like when the doctor's wife throws herself on the bed. Like nobody does that. It's just, that's a TV thing to do, or a teenage person type of thing to do. I think there are some misgivings in the episode I can't quite put my finger on, because I like everything that goes on, and I find myself smiling and laughing and enjoying it. But it just, and at the start I thought, oh, this is a 5 out of 5. That this is my kind of episode. But at the end of it, I think I have to go like a 4.5. It just didn't quite get to that amazing for me, but I enjoyed the weird characters, the monochrome look of it, the silliness, the over-exaggeration. And I will watch it again, happily, but it's not like a 5 out of 5. There's just something, a secret ingredient missing from this.
I find I would love to know what this episode would look like had it been in the hands of Darren Morgan.
Yes.
Like, I know we've said this before, but you know, Chris Carter's a good writer when it comes to mythology stuff. At least in the early seasons. We'll get to the later ones when we get to him, but I feel like sometimes when he tries to go a bit deeper, he ends up kind of zeroing in on several different themes, and because he's doing several, you never get one that really crystallizes in the way that it would with Darren Morgan. And now I'm not saying they don't here. I think there are a couple that kind of crystallize, but it's like, is it an episode about the irresponsibility of science? Is it an episode about fame and fame seekers and what people are willing to do to get it? Is it an episode about monsters, being not necessarily physical things, but like your internal monsters,
not the outside, but in the inside.
Yeah. You know, there's a lot of stuff in there, and I do think there's a couple of things that he does do pretty well. But I would just imagine that if Morgan had hold of this, he would zero in on one of those themes, and then he would just nail it. But yeah, there's a certain coldness to this one, I feel, that for whatever reason just doesn't excite me the way that I feel it should. But I can't deny that it is very well written. It's very well directed. It's really nicely shot. It's got some really beautiful moments in it between Mulder and Scully. I guess I think I would have liked to have seen a bit more of Mulder and Scully kind of interacting with each other, I guess. I don't know what it is. There's just, like you say, sometimes there's that thing that you just can't put your finger on. But yeah, it's a 4 for me. I think it's a really solid episode. If this was in another season, an earlier season, it would be, it would be competing to be in like some of the top episodes of that season, I think. But so far, we've just, we came out the gate swinging, and we've just kept knocking them down. So like still not had a bad episode, nothing close to a bad episode in this season. We're 5 for 5 at this point. But yeah.
Exemplary. It makes me wonder what it would be like to watch Home in black and white.
Oof, you know? Yeah. Another thing as well I'll say is this is the first time I've watched this in widescreen. So I'd always watched this on DVD.
4:3.
And it's 4:3. And this is actually an episode that I think works better in that aspect ratio for obvious reasons.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, it's like the films it's harkening back to, they were all 4:3. And watching it this time around, I felt like it lost something by having that full widescreen ratio. So yeah, that was a bizarre kind of thing to notice. But yeah, there you go. So
okay, so tell me a little bit about episode 6, Christmas Carol.
So it's mythology. It's part 1 of a 2-part story.
Oh, right.
It's Scully centric. There's there's literally only one scene with Mulder in it. And I don't want to give anything away. This is the thing. But yeah, it deals with a child who may or may not be Scully's sister's child.
Right.
Yeah.
The thing I have with the thing that I get annoyed with 2-part episodes is that I like to watch it, talk about it, and then watch the next part. So whereas as soon as it ends, I want to know what's happening. I know I need to wait until I talk to Brian, and then I get to watch the next one and get the conclusion. I find that frustrating. But hey ho. Yeah. Looking forward to it. Just quickly, are we going to keep the streak going of great episodes?
I think we are. I don't know that it's as loved as other mythology episodes, but it's one that I always had a bit of a. It's more intimate. I think it's not. It's Scully's family at Christmas. So you know, Scully goes to her brother's for Christmas with her mum. So there's a lot of the Scully family dynamics going on.
Douchebag brother.
Yeah, douchebag brother.
Is it
Bill? Yeah, Bill. So it's not your big conspiracy kind of one with, you know, alien bounty hunters and this time. It's a lot more quieter stuff, a lot more intimate stuff. It's a bit more feminine because it's dealing with things that Scully's going through internally. So for me, as someone who really loves Scully's character, I can get on board with that. I don't mind if it's not, you know, alien spaceships and explosions and this, that, and the other. So
good. And that's something to look forward to. Christmas Carol, the first part of a 2-parter, and my frustration at not knowing what happens. Yeah, I'm sure that'll come out in the next episode. As always, if you don't mind, rate us on iTunes or hit the like button on the YouTube channel, because these help promote our show and more people can join in the conversation. And we'll see you next week for episode 6, Christmas Carol. Thanks for watching.